Apologies for the long delay and the sound of the washing machine in the background. We are returning to The Dark is Rising, Part 1, The Finding the Sign Seeker. "Yes, ma'am," Will said at the sound of her voice. His happiness came flooding back. The rising alarm dropped away, and he stood up erect and eager, peering into the shadow behind her chair where Merriman had moved a few paces back. He could see the glint of white hair on the tall figure, but no more. Merriman's deep voice came out of the shadow. "Stand still. Look at whatever you like, but not hard. Concentrate on nothing. Let your mind wander. Pretend that you are in a boring class at school." Will laughed and stood there relaxed, tilting his head back. He squinted up, idly trying to distinguish between the dark crisscrossing beams in the high roof and the black lines that were their shadows. Merriman said casually, "I am putting a picture into your mind. Tell me what you see." The image formed itself in Will's mind as naturally as if he had decided to paint an imaginary landscape and were making up the look of it before putting it on paper. He said, describing the details as they came to him, "There's a grassy hillside, over the sea, like a sort of gentle cliff. Lots of blue, and the sea a darker blue underneath. A long way down, right down there where the sea meets the land, there's a strip of sand, lovely, glowing golden sand, and inland from the grassy headland, you can't really see it from here except out of the corner of your eye, hills, misty hills. They're a soft sort of purple, and their edges dissolve into a blue mist, the way the colours in a painting dissolve into one another if you keep it wet, and..." He came out of his half-trance of seeing and looked hard at Merriman, peering into the shadow with inquisitive interest. "And it's a sad picture. You miss it. You're homesick for wherever it is. Where is it?" "Enough," Merriman said hastily, but he sounded pleased. "You do well. Now it is your turn. Give me a picture, Will. Just choose some ordinary scene. Anything, and think of the way it looks, as if you were standing looking at it." Will thought of the first image that came into his head. It was one which he realized now had been worrying away at the back of his thoughts all this while. The picture of the two great doors isolated on the snowy hillside, with all their intricate carvings and strange blur at their edges. Merriman said at once, "Not the doors. Nothing so close. Somewhere from your life before this winter came." For a second, Will stared at him, disconcerted. Then he swallowed hard, closed his eyes, and thought of the jeweler's shop his father ran in the little town of Eton. Merriman said slowly, "The door handle is of the lever kind, like a round bar, to be pushed downward perhaps 10 degrees on opening. A small hanging bell rings as the door moves. You step down a few inches to reach the floor. The jolt of the drop is startling without being dangerous. There are glass showcases all round the walls, and beneath the glass counter, of course, this must be your father's shop, with some beautiful things inside it. A grandfather clock, very old, in the back corner with a painted face and deep, slow tick. A turquoise necklace in the central showcase, with a setting of silver serpents. Zuni work, I think, a very long way from home. An emerald pendant like a great green tear. A small enchanting model of a crusader castle in gold. Perhaps a salt cellar that you have loved. I think, since you were a small boy, and that man behind the counter, short, content, and gentle, must be your father, Roger Stanton. Interesting to see him clearly at last, free of the mist. He has a jeweler's glass in his eye, and he is looking at a ring. An old gold ring with 9 tiny stones set in 3 rows, 3 diamond chips in the center and 3 rubies at either side, and some curious runic lines edging those that I think I must look at more closely one day soon." "You even got the ring?" Will said, fascinated. "That's Mother's ring, and Dad was looking at it last time I was in the shop. She thought one of the stones was loose, but he said it was an optical illusion. How do you do it?" "Do what?" There was an ominous softness in the deep voice. "Well, that. Put a picture in my head, and then see the one I had there myself. Telepathy, isn't it called? It's tremendous, but an uneasiness was beginning in his mind. Very well, said Merriman patiently. I will show you another way. There is a circle in the candle flames before you there on the table, Will Stanton. Now, do you know of any possible way of putting out one of those flames other than blowing on it or quenching it with water or snuffer or hand? No. No, there is none. But now I tell you that you, because you are who you are, can do it simply by wishing it. For the gift that you have is a very small this is a very small task indeed. If in your mind you choose one of those flames and think of it without looking, think of it and tell it to go out, then the flame will go out. And is that a possible thing for any normal boy to do? No, said Will unhappily. Do it, Merriman said. Now. There was a sudden, thick silence in the room like velvet. Will could feel them both watching him. He thought desperately, I'll get out of it. I'll get out of it. I'll think of a flame, but it won't be one of those. It'll be something much bigger, something that couldn't be put out except by some tremendous impossible magic even Merriman doesn't know. He looked around the room at the light and shadow dancing side by side across the rich tapestries on the stone walls, and he thought hard in furious concentration of the image of the blazing log fire in the huge fireplace behind him. He felt the warmth of it on the back of his neck, and thought of the glowing orange heart of the big pile of logs and the leaping yellow tongues of flames. Go out, fire, he said to it in his mind, feeling suddenly safe and free from the dangers of power, because no fire as big as that could possibly go out without a real reason. Stop burning, fire. Go out. And the fire went out. All at once the room was chill and darker. The ring of candle flames on the table burned on. In a small, cold pool of their own light only, Will spun round, staring in consternation at the hearth. There was no hint of smoke or water or any way in which the fire could possibly have died. But dead it was, cold and black, without a spark. He moved toward it slowly. Merriman and the old lady said no word and did not stir. Will bent and touched the blackened logs of the hearth, and they were cold as stone, yet furred with a layer of new ash that fell away under his fingers and into a white dust. He stood up, rubbing his hands slowly up and down his trouser leg, and looked helplessly at Merriman. The man's deep eyes burned like black candle flames, and there was compassion in them as Will glanced nervously across at the old lady. He saw a kind of tenderness in her face, too. She said gently, "It is a little cold, Will." For a timeless interval there was no more than a flicker of nerve. Will felt a screaming flash of panic, a memory of the fear he had felt in the dark nightmare of the snowstorm. Then it was gone, and in the peace of its vanishing he felt somehow stronger, taller, more relaxed. He knew that in some way he had accepted the power, whatever it was, that he had been resisting, and he knew what he must do. Taking a deep breath, he squared his shoulders and stood straight and firm there in the great hall. He smiled at the old lady, then looked past her at nothing and concentrated on the image of the fire. "Come back, fire," he said in his mind. "Burn again." And the light was dancing over the tapestried walls once more, and the warmth of the flames was back on his neck, and the fire burned. "Thank you," the old lady said. "Well done," said Merriman softly, and Will knew that he was not speaking merely of extinguishing and relighting a fire. "It is a burden," Merriman said. "Make no mistake about that. Any great gift or power or talent is a burden, and this more than any, and you will often long to be free of it, but there is nothing to be done. If you were born with the gift, then you must serve it, and nothing in this world or out of it may stand in the way of that service, because that is why you were born, and that is the law. And it is just as well, young Will, that you have only a glimmering of an idea of the gift that is in you. For until the first ordeals of learning are over, you will be in great danger, and the less you know of the meaning of your power, the better able it will be to protect you as it has done for the last 10 years. He gazed at the fire for a moment, frowning. "I will tell you only this, that you are one of the old ones, the first to have been born for 500 years,
and the last, and like all such, you are bound by nature to devote yourself to the long conflict between the light and the dark. Your birth will completed a circle that has been growing for 4,000 years. In every oldest part of the land, the circle of the old ones. Now that you have come into your power, your task is to make that circle indestructible. It is your quest to find and to guard the 6 great signs of light, made over the centuries by the old ones, to be joined in power only when the circle is complete. The first sign hangs on your belt already, but to find the rest will not be easy. You are the sign-seeker, Will Stanton. That is your destiny, your first quest. If you can accomplish that, you will have brought to life one of the 3 great forces that the old ones must turn soon toward vanquishing the powers of the dark, which are reaching now stealthily and steadily all over the world. The rhythm of his voice, which had been rising and falling in an increasingly formal pattern, changed suddenly into a kind of chanted battle cry, a call. Will suddenly, with a chill tightening his skin to things beyond the great hall, beyond the time of the calling. For the dark is rising, the walker is abroad, the rider is riding. They have woken, the dark is rising, and the last of the circle is come to claim his own, and the circles must now all be joined. The white horse must go to the hunter, and the river take the valley. There must be fire on the mountain, fire under the stone, fire over the sea, fire burn away the dark, for the dark is rising. He stood there tall as a tree in the shadowed room, his deep voice ringing out in an echo. Will could not take his eyes from him. The dark is rising. That was exactly what he had felt last night. That was what he was beginning to feel again now, a shadowy awareness of evil pricking at his fingertips and the top of his spine. But for the life of him he could not utter a word. Merriman said in a sing-song tone that came strangely from his awesome figure, as if he were a child reciting, "When the dark comes rising, 6 shall turn it back, 3 from the circle, 3 from the track, wood, bronze, iron, water, fire, stone. 5 will return, and 1 go alone." Then he swept forward, out of the shadow, past the old lady, still and bright-eyed in her high-backed chair, and with one hand he raised one of the thick white candles out of the burning ring, and with the other swung Will toward the towering side wall. "Look for each moment, Will," he said. "The old ones will show something of themselves, and remind the deepest part of you for one moment. Look at each," and Will beside him strode long-legged round the hall, and with Will beside him he strode long-legged round the hall, holding the candle aloft again and again beside each of the hanging tapestries on the wall. Each time, as if he had commanded it, one bright image shone for an instant out of each glowing embroidered square, as bright and deep as a sunlit picture through a window frame, and Will saw.